Pour moi.
Claude, you can talk?
I've always had the gift of gab, Nancy. But now you can understand. With Pretty Litter, the odor-neutralizing, long-lasting, health-indicating kitty litter that's simply the most luxurious way to bury my poopies and my peepees.
Pretty Litter was developed with veterinarians. It helps me monitor potential health problems just by changing color.
Go to prettylitter.com today. Pretty Litter, not just a pretty litter.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
To get the Crime Writers on Aftershow right now, go to patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, it was the biggest true crime book of the decade and played a role in the capture of the Golden State Killer. We'll revisit our discussion of the HBO adaptation of I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life. It's Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
So, Kevin, what are we going to hear in today's CWO Classic Rewind?
Okay, we're going to go back to the days of lockdown and our review of the HBO adaptation of Michelle McNamara's true crime book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark. And our discussion was on June 29th, 2020.
Wow. Well, that's an oldie but a goodie, Kevin. I remember reading the book, I remember watching the doc, and I can't wait to hear us talk about it.
All right, let's do it.
We were awakened by a voice and a bright light. It was a real sense of evil in the house.
He made me tie up my husband.
He ordered her to put dishes on my back
and say, if I hear these dishes fall down, I'm going to kill your family.
It was one of the scariest and least remembered crime sprees in California. Blogger Michelle McNamara became fascinated with the tale of a suspect first known as the East Area Rapist, who she dubbed the Golden State Killer.
Michelle looked at it from the hopeful, putting puzzles together, trying to make sense of violence.
I was in search of a man who was attacking women and girls throughout Northern California.
And the great tragedy of this case to me is that it's not better known.
HBO's 6-part adaptation of McNamara's book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, pulls together the narratives of the criminal's many victims, the cops frustrated by the cold case, and the army of armchair detectives dabbling into a 5-decade unsolved mystery.
The Irvine Police Department investigating an apparent homicide.
He's called the Golden State Killer.
This case is huge.
Michelle would actually go to the crime scene and walk the case.
Geographic connections, DNA profiles, genealogy websites. The first time she called me, I thought, she knows her stuff. So I started telling her things about my investigation.
But at the heart of the documentary is McNamara, who died before completing her manuscript. Just as the book filled with details of horrific crimes included passages of McNamara's own life, the documentary leans heavily on her story to explain the journey to publication and the arrest of a suspect. Now, the first episode of I'll Be Gone in the Dark aired on Sunday, but HBO provided us with screeners for the first 3 episodes of I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Although there's really no spoilers to give away, if you'd rather just get to our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews, go to the estimated time code in our show notes. Now, Laura, you wrote in your notes that you're probably the only one in the group who hasn't read the book. That is not true.
Oh.
I haven't read it.
Kevin has not read the book either.
Yeah.
But you were a little bit afraid to delve into this story. Why is that?
I was, because, we watch a lot of crime shows. We listen to a lot of crime podcasts. I've been involved in the crime world, but this particular case is just, it's so random and it's so violent. And when you know that detail of the case, and then you also know the mental health impact that it had on Michelle McNamara, and then I'd see people that would read the book or listen to the book and they'd be like, I can't sleep at night now. And I'm like, I don't know if I can go there. So I've put off reading this book kind of because of that.
I will tell you, I read this book when I was on vacation with my 2 sons and Kevin was at home. Remember, I took them to Mexico last year?
Yeah.
And I read it in the paper copy because we had gotten a galley copy. And I will tell you, Laura Bricker, the Golden State Killer is like, hands down, like the crimes committed by this guy are the very, very scariest version of these kinds of crimes you could possibly imagine.
I heard a noise, but at 15 years old, you always hear noises in your house when your parents aren't home. So I didn't think much of it. I stopped. I do remember stopping and listening and didn't hear anything else. So I continued to play. It wasn't very much longer, maybe a couple minutes, that I felt a presence next to me, and I looked up, and then I felt a knife at my throat.
Like, it's not just the sort of waking up in the middle of the night with a flashlight in your face and then, you know, you get raped and your husband has to like lie there with dishes on his back, or maybe you get murdered. It is literally, he is stalking these people for months beforehand, going into their homes. He would like take things from one room and put them in another room. He would like disconnect electrical things. He would like basically be in your house before the crime so many times.
Yeah.
It's freaking terrifying. I remember calling Kevin and being like, Kevin, we're getting an alarm system on our house. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
Toby, what do you think about like this, just the scariness? I mean, I think that's part of the reason why this case is so fascinating, right? Because it's scary. This crime, this particular criminal, unlike even other serial killers, there's a scariness to him that is really kind of like new and different, right?
2 things. One is, I mean, the scariness of the crimes is about as scary as it gets, as far as I'm concerned. It's like these home invasion, absolutely brutal crimes. But beyond that, it doesn't really seem like this whole case doesn't seem super interesting to me, because you don't really know much about him. The only thing that's interesting beyond like how brutal things are, if that's something that captures your interest, is that they can't catch him. That's why I think the decision to focus a lot on Michelle is a good decision, because unless you're just going to go through horrible crime after horrible crime after horrible crime, there's really not much to say about the guy. The story is really in trying to figure out who he is. And that's where Michelle comes in, is a good focal point, not just her work, but for work that other people were doing at various levels of effectiveness.
I think in the book, and I don't want to like lean too heavily in the book because that's not what we're reviewing right now, but it does tie together these different threads of things that all the witnesses said. And there were things that were known about him. One is that he had a tiny penis, which like everybody really liked. Kept like every single, you know, he'd be described as fat, and he'd be described as thin, he'd be described as blonde, he'd be described as dark haired, he'd be described as puffy faced, he'd be described as, you know, whatever. But it was always different. But the one consistent thing was he always had like a tiny penis, which is like a weird but also sort of schadenfreude detail of the whole thing, which I just always found sort of interesting as being the only notable thing about this guy who committed.
Pop psychologists might say, well, there's one of your...
but people literally saw him jumping over fences. They saw him riding bikes. They saw him running through neighborhoods, not just people who were victimized by him. But getting back to the documentary, Kevin, there's one thing that I think we sort of share as a little bit of a knock on the way this is structured. Michelle McNamara is and was a talented, likable, lovely human being in every regard.
Right.
But it's almost like the filmmakers don't think we're going to know that or believe it just by showing us, right?
Right. They keep telling us. Like, I thought the introduction of Michelle was pretty heavy-handed.
I saw her confidence growing. It was really exciting to have someone you're in love with someone and they're doing something and you can see how excited and energized they are about it. And that makes you excited and energized. I'm amazed I'm still funny. I'm amazed I'm still funny because I'm in love. I'm in love. I'm in love. Yes, I am.
The first half hour of this 6-part story about a serial killer has to do with people telling us how wonderful she is and what a great writer she was and how she changed all this other stuff, instead of letting us discover that ourselves along the way.
Which we do.
Which we do.
Right.
What's fascinating to me about this case is that it's rich with so many clues. And it really seems to me that it's just time, energy, and curiosity. And that, and frankly, it should be solved. I mean, it just should be.
I got to tell you, honestly, I became a little resentful because they really were pushing this hard. And it actually took me till the third episode to kind of get over that.
Right.
And start seeing Michelle as sort of herself and not as the way that everybody is portraying her.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that she wasn't a lovely person and isn't worthy of being revered. It just came off like too much of a Valentine for what the subject matter is. Now, it's important because, I see that was one, from what I hear from everybody, that was one of the more important elements of her book, was the biographical stuff.
Right, but she doesn't talk about how wonderful she is in her own book.
No, this is true. No.
But she shows it in the book, and I think the documentary shows it.
As opposed to telling.
Exactly.
Show and don't tell, and there was a lot of telling right off the front. Like, I love Patton Oswalt. I don't know if we had to see all of his routines, talking about how wonderful his wife is. By the time we get to the third episode, where we've had some time to live their lives, that we see them as both, I think, is who they are.
Lovely people.
Lovely people. And he's very supportive, and she is determined, but also very loving. I just wasn't crazy about the way that was handled.
I actually agree with you. And it's funny because I loved the book. And I actually, I know some of the people who worked on the book and who've worked on the case and the story, and I really like all of them. And it really is astonishing to me, like her talent for not just for writing, but also for actual investigating. So much so, and we'll talk about this in a second, that all these cops were cooperating with her, which you and I know is rare and really speaks to a specific kind of trust building.
Yeah.
So she does, in the book, she does show that she is a trustworthy, deep, kind of scarred and interesting and layered and sad person. And the documentary does show that. And so I actually would have cut that whole it almost felt like, I know that Patton Oswalt has the rights to the book. It almost felt like that Liz Garbus felt like, I want to set it up this way to make no mistake about it. But you can't make a mistake about it because she actually was all those things. I actually found that a little bit of a flaw too. Laura, were you surprised that Michelle McNamara, for all intents and purposes, an amateur investigator, an at-home investigator who's scouring the internet at night, who's writing a blog, celebrity connections aside, was able to gain the trust of so many, not just cops, but witnesses? Like you and I both know, that's how almost impossible that is.
Well, I think that it didn't happen overnight. When we see her establish a connection with Paul Holes, and, he is investigating the case, and she calls him, and he says he was quite reticent to talk to her. But she did what I think any good journalist, investigative reporter does, that is doing the job in a way to kind of nurture sources and cultivate sources. She just kept talking to him, and she'd tell him, you kind of trade information. And that's one of the ways when you're a reporter and you're out working a beat that you start to get information out of your sources. You find out some information and you share it with them. They may not share information with you for a while, but you keep going back and sharing information with them, and you have credible information. Eventually, they're going to start to give you a little nugget of information. And we saw that dynamic grow between her and this particular investigator. But also with the woman, I loved the citizen detectives, the social worker.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So what you're thinking is that I could sit there.
You could sit there and go through them. Okay. I just can't let them leave my hand.
Right. How many pages are there altogether?
Right, 4,000 or 5,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
It's all the rapes.
Right.
It's all 50 rapes.
Wow.
I should make a trade with you today. You let me take this today, and I'll let you take the cases today.
Wow.
And then we give them back.
I would do that. I would do that, but we have to give them back.
I can't believe I'm doing this. But
She was like the gatekeeper to a whole nother part of this story. And that took some time. So the way that she introduced herself to them was like, hey, I noticed you on this forum, and you seem to make good points, and you sound, reasonable. Basically, you don't sound crazy. But she said it in a more diplomatic way. And again, it started this sort of back and forth relationship to the point that then when they're meeting in person and the social worker has all of these police files, at first she's like, there's no way you should be seeing these police files. And she's like, you know what? I trust you. take the files.
Toby, one of the things that was interesting to me about the way this is put together, obviously, with Patton Oswalt sort of being in it and part of it, and, the kind of, her family is in it and part of it, they have access to a lot of Michelle's personal materials. They have access to her draft. They have access to her voicemails.
Hi, Cliff. My name is Michelle McNamara. I'm a crime writer in Los Angeles. I am doing a series on unsolved crimes. Hi, Kate. This is Michelle McNamara. Hey, it's Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Hi.
They have access to footage that she filmed in these ride-alongs, with the social worker and in her own investigation. There's access to video interviews that she did, probably stuff that was just like on her own computer, is able to sort of be like woven in and out of here to tell the story. And, I know that you did the book on the deep dive and you've read the book. It really is. I was telling Kevin earlier, it's not dissimilar to Catch and Kill, which is, Ronan Farrow's narrative, not just of the story, but his reporting of the story. It's really a lot like that, which is about her intersection with the story and how she did it and what she was doing and how it sort of wove into her life. Do you think the documentary makes good use of all of these other materials, like the text of her text messages and the voice memos and so forth?
Yeah, I think so. It's a little bit hard to picture watching this without having read the book, because it's the same story. And I was actually, while you guys were talking, I was thinking, like, Kevin frequently says, whose story is this? And this is clearly made to be Michelle's story. And you're kind of finding out about her through her investigation of this case. So, yeah, I mean, I do feel, and I agree with you guys that it starts off pretty strong and not in a good way. But that you do get a good sense of her and sort of, I guess, the charisma she has. Whether you feel like that's the right frame for the story, I think the stuff that they have of hers is used pretty effectively. Do I need to hear Patton Oswalt do little bits about how much he loves his wife and how his wife is too good for him? I'm not sure what that added, because you get more of a sense of their relationship just through these texts that he sends her, where he's being really supportive in these situations where it's probably quite frustrating that she's, so single-minded on this stuff. And, I guess part of this comes from reading the book, but that she, to the exclusion of other things that you would expect your partner to be kind of around for. And they bring up the thing about Thanksgiving, where they're having Thanksgiving dinner, but she's going to go up and work on her stuff. And her friend cooks everything at her house.
Right.
And that's not a one-off. That's happening all the time. But Patton Oswalt is like, at least the examples they show is like very encouraging and very, supportive of those decisions and doing whatever he can to make that work.
I found that very moving, actually. There's this whole passage where he says, I recognize in you some behaviors that I had when I was finishing my book. And you think he's going to talk about like something else, something maybe not positive.
Yeah.
But instead, he's like talking about the fact that she's letting herself be distracted by taking their daughter to soccer and making dinner. And he's like, I've got all of that covered. You just go finish your book. I found that I almost like burst into tears when I saw that. I'm like, that is the kind of support that like most marriages don't have.
Yeah.
And it just felt so wonderful.
Thanks, Patton, for ruining it.
I know that.
For us.
But there is also the sense of dread because, the one criticism I had around the narrative about Michelle McNamara when the book came out was, and I don't want to I obviously don't know all the facts, but I feel like the documentary is going there. She died of an accidental overdose of a combination of drugs she was taking. And one of them was fentanyl, which we all know is like an incredibly deadly narcotic. She was also taking Adderall and, Xanax and all this other stuff. She had this like cocktail of drugs she was taking. And we see in her text messages here that she was using them to sort of like stay on task and to sort of stay present and all that stuff. You do sort of get more hints about kind of the dread of what's going to happen to her in this than I was expecting. And
I felt that at the end of episode 3.
But to me, that's important because that is part of the story. And I do feel like after she died and when the book was finished by Paul Haynes, who's in the documentary, who when you read the book, it's just, Laura, I'm just going to spoil one thing for you about the book that's so extraordinary.
Yeah.
The parts that Michelle wrote, she talks about working with this online sleuth and she only identifies him as the kid.
Yeah.
Because she has no expectation that she's going to die, obviously. Yeah. And the idea is that he's doing research and he's doing all this data work and he makes all these maps and all this cool stuff. And then she dies and he ends up writing the rest of the book.
Oh.
And it's extraordinary because he sort of comes out of the gate and identifies himself. He's like, my name is Paul. You may know me as the kid. He didn't say that exactly, but it's an extraordinary moment, like in the book itself.
Yeah.
Good thing he could write.
But because of the way the book was brought to press, I really do feel like we didn't talk enough about how she died. And I really hope the documentary goes there. I'm sorry if that's too dark.
It seems to be signposting that it will.
It's important.
That it's going to deal with that.
But to me, it's also something that like her death can tell a story in and of itself that is important.
Well, if you want to make this adaptation Michelle's story, then you have to deal with that and deal with it honestly. Because, what is it we always say? When you do a piece of nonfiction, you either betray your subject or you betray the audience.
Right.
And so are they going to betray Michelle by telling all of her secrets? Or are they going to betray the audience by holding them back?
Well, I was going to say, I think that they are doing a good job foreshadowing that this is where we're going. I mean, you have Patton talking about when in the middle of the night, she wakes up and she's like, such a light sleeper now, and she'll like run out of the house, or she jumped up and she's on like high alert. And then there was another part where we're talking about who left the door unlocked in the house and don't leave the door unlocked in the house. And then towards the second half of that third episode, we were seeing a lot of signs that they were going down the road of being, I would say, fairly forthcoming about her mental decline as the research into this book gets even deeper than she was before. And I felt like that was exactly where this was going.
I mean, I honestly, I'll say it again. I don't think there's anything shameful about the way Michelle McNamara died, but I think it's a story that's important to tell.
Agreed.
Because those drugs are available. They are prescribed. And she was clearly coping with a lot in addition to being on deadline for a book, which all four of us have been.
Right.
Toby, the feeling of being on deadline for a book.
They are showing that.
Yeah, they're
as
showing
opposed to telling.
Exactly, exactly. But Toby, I mean, I think that one thing our listeners may not understand. I mean, they may understand how it would be easy to be depressed if your parents die, and how it would be easy to be depressed about, working on a book that's so dark and a subject matter so dark. But like, I don't mean to like make light of it, but the looming deadline of a publisher is also like a dreadful experience. Toby, have you ever had that experience?
I can't say that I've ever been like going down to the minute, like this idea that I have 54 hours and then I've got to have, like, I've never been in that situation.
We have, right, Kevin? Yeah. Kevin and
I'm thinking about my Facebook watch video right now, as a matter of fact.
Kevin and I have done that exact thing where we've booked a hotel room so we could finish. Remember? We did that twice.
Did that for me. Yeah.
Remember when we went to New York once and holed up in my sister's apartment when she was away, just so we could finish the stupid book and make the deadline?
My concern about where this is headed is if it falls into this, she went into such dark places that this is the result.
Yeah.
Because I think that was kind of what happened with Heath Ledger when he played the Joker. And it's like he accessed deep parts of a soul that no man. And it's like, that seems to me to be such a shallow read.
Yeah.
And sort of discounts the actual deal with these drugs, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a powerful, addictive drugs. So I would be disappointed if they went in that direction. I hope they don't. I think there's the people who are involved probably have better sense than that.
Right.
But I do think that's a temptation. It kind of ties everything. It ties her death to all these deaths that she was investigating in a way that I don't think is genuine.
No, and I also don't want to give the Golden State Killer credit for also killing Michelle McNamara. That's not what happened, right? It's not.
Right.
And she was clearly a wonderful and warm and smart person who took the role of armchair detective to a place from it being not important to a place where it could actually make a difference and be important. And she actually elevated the role of these actual armchair detectives doing good work. I think about the Bear Brook armchair detectives. I mean, these cases are very tied together.
A lot of the same folks.
Yeah, a lot of the same people.
Here,
a lot of the same people are involved in both cases because, of course, the Bear Brook case is the one that developed the one that at first used the technique that ended up solving this case.
DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today and let us surprise you.
Let's check in on the Serta counting sheep.
Why aren't we counting anymore?
Well, the all-new Serta Perfect Sleeper has the Q4 support system that helps relieve aches and back pain.
We'll never get counted again.
Nope.
Serta, we make the world's best mattress. Monday, AI agents took over my work. And I absolutely love it. Chasing deadlines, writing status reports, updating stakeholders. Agents handle the daily grind now. They live inside Monday.com, so they see the full picture. My work, my team, the whole company. And I don't have to worry about the data. It's safe, which means I'm free to focus on the big stuff, knowing everything runs smoothly in the background. It's completely shifted the way we work. Create your own AI agent in minutes on Monday.com.
Traditional home security only alerts you after a break-in, and that's too late. SimpliSafe is changing that.
Stop. This is SimpliSafe. Police are on the way.
We don't just alert, we stop crime before it starts. SimpliSafe, plan starting around $1 a day. Save 50% on your new system with professional monitoring at simplisafe.com/SXM or with promo code SXM.
Outdoor deterrence requires a SimpliSafe Active Guard outdoor protection plan starting at $49.99 a month. Visit simplisafe.com/licenses for alarm license information. Tennessee 2012.
A BetterHelp ad. Have you ever had so many tabs open that your computer starts slowing down? Life can feel like that too. BetterHelp's 2026 State of Stigma report found that 74% of Americans believe society still discourages asking for help. Therapy can help you sort through what's taking up space and quietly affecting you. With BetterHelp, connect with a licensed therapist online and switch anytime. Maybe it's time to close a few tabs. Visit BetterHelp.com.
We should probably do what we do. Let our listeners know, should they check out I'll Be Gone in the Dark, new 6-part documentary premiering on HBO just this week. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Do you think our listeners will enjoy this documentary? Thumbs up or thumbs down for you?
I think that our listeners will enjoy this documentary. I would give it a thumbs up with this sort of, I don't want to call it trigger warning, but just a warning. It's pretty intense in terms of this particular crime, this killer, and the emotional impact that it has on Michelle as she is researching this case and really becomes totally immersed in it. So it's pretty heavy. It's well done. I loved the use of the computer where they showed like searching and typing, and they had a good sort of B-roll that they used while the person was narrating and while she was narrating in her own voice. So I would say thumbs up, but just heads up, you're going to need to watch something kind of light when you're done with this.
Toby Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for I'll Be Gone in the Dark on HBO?
My guess is that most people will probably like it more than I do. I give it a thumbs up, and I wish I could put my finger on exactly what the issue is for me. It's less than the sum of its parts in some ways, and I don't know if it has to do with pacing and the fact that I just wasn't feeling much narrative momentum at times. I think they do a pretty good job balancing the amount of time they spend with Michelle and the amount of time they spend on the actual crimes of the Golden State Killer. But it wasn't the kind of thing where when it was over, I was like, I can't wait till the next one. So I give it a thumbs up. I think it's well done. I just kind of feel like there was something that was slightly off, and I think it's probably that sort of inconsistency of pacing with these two main streams that they have going in it.
What about you, Kevin?
I'm feeling better about this now we've talked about it. That's what we've talked it out. Yeah, I went all three ways, up, down, sideways.
While watching these episodes?
While watching these episodes. Like when it gets to the meat of the cases, it's where it really hits its stride. Unlike, Man in the Window, that podcast, this really achieves the horror of the crimes with some really thoughtful interviews with so many of the victims, and you get to see the different ways that they've sort of processed it and handled it. In general, I'm uneasy with stories in which it's portrayed that the most interesting thing about the crime is that someone is writing about it. The nonfiction writer's journey is sometimes a really great way to tell a story, like Catch and Kill, or All the President's Men. You gotta get to see the procedure behind it. That can be an interesting way to frame it, so long as it doesn't get too self-absorbed and self-congratulatory. I haven't read the book, so I'm not burdened by having read it. But it just seems that it's been a real challenge to bring to the screen some of the better works of true crime from the past decade, that they've been really uneven. And the best stuff has been the little-known stuff. So I don't know about this one. I'm going to give it a thumbs up just because I don't want to pan it.
Yeah, I like it. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I think Toby's description is apt. And here's the difference between, say, A Catch and Kill and this documentary.
Yeah.
Michelle McNamara died. If this had happened, if she had finished this book and published this book, and this book had been made into a documentary, I guarantee you, having read Michelle McNamara's book, that the in-your-faceness of the Michelle McNamara stuff would not have been the way it is. Probably the director would have said, you have to be in it, just like the publisher did.
Yeah.
You have to be in it. Your journey is part of it.
I've had that. The publisher tell me, put your story in it. I wasn't comfortable with that either.
I mean, I actually kept thinking as I was watching this how deeply uncomfortable she would be.
Yeah, and we hear her
with
say
this
that.
because I read the book and she was uncomfortable being in the book, and she writes that in the book.
Right.
And
the drama of meeting a deadline is not equivalent to the drama of a prowler coming into rape.
Exactly.
You. Yeah.
And I do think that one of the things that Toby talks about the pacing that's interesting is that, so in the book, there are all these moments that are climactic or like cliffhangery.
Yeah.
In the book, this
cliffhangery.
is
I like that.
A great example would be the cufflinks.
Yeah.
In the book, it's immediately dispelled. Like she finds the cufflinks, she thinks she's onto something, but what that's really about is her getting in inroads with the cops, and she almost immediately finds out that they're not the right cufflinks in the book. But in the documentary, they actually make it a cliffhanger at the end of the episode,
that
like
maybe
she found the guy.
Yeah.
So they are sort of drawing out these Michelle lines like fatter and deeper than they need to be. I actually think a more understated telling of her part of the story. The text messages are incredibly affecting. Patton Oswalt's interactions with her are affecting. The most affecting part of it is the cop from the 1980s who we see in the moment and then we see in the first person in real time.
The one with the giant
Carol?
hair.
Oh, she's incredible. That stuff is affecting. The victim stuff is affecting. And I do think the pacing doesn't match. I think that they should have done a better job sort of matching the pacing of the book. Michelle is part of it on its face, so you don't need to be so upfront with it. That being said, I really do like it. I loved the book. I'll love anything that comes from this book, so I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Kevin, it didn't sound like you were going to give that a thumbs up. So,
yeah, but I did. I didn't think it was perfect, but I want to ask you, do you think, because, we look at the book and all, sort of all the lore around it, do you think what went into the capture of the Golden State Killer, is that still something that people look to as peak true crime?
I do think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there are not a lot of cases where regular people, aka so-called citizen sleuths, get together and it turns out to be an enterprise that you can look back on and say, wow, they really knew what they were doing. And I think that I'll Be Gone in the Dark, the book, and then this doc about the book is a really good example of an unusual story that brought people together to do something that made a huge difference and to develop techniques that we're still using. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, this show was recorded in the Caitlin Rogers Project Studio, also known as Studio C, the closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where we also insert random clips of Creature from the Black Lagoon in our episodes. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Partners in crime media.
In the U.S., there's a break-in every 26 seconds. But when intruders step near, Simply Safe Home Security steps up.
Stop. This is Simply Safe. Police are on the way.
Using AI alerts, U.S.-based live agents help deter break-ins. Simply Safe, no long-term contracts. Save 50% on your new system with professional monitoring at simplysafe.com/SXM or with promo code SXM.
Outdoor deterrence requires a Simply Safe Active Guard outdoor protection plan starting at $49.99 a month. Visit simplysafe.com/licenses for alarm license information. Tennessee 2012.